Hello and welcome to It's an Arsenal Thing podcast. I'm your host, Tom, and I'm with Jay as well. Silent Dave's milling around somewhere. Please like, follow, or subscribe. That's all we ask for the gods of the algorithms. Right, our subject tonight, Rewind 89. It's up for grabs. It's about that classic match between Liverpool and Arsenal. But Jay, how are you doing first?
Yeah, I'm very well, Tom. Thank you. Yeah, very well. Yeah, very well. Thanks for having me on again.
No problem at all, mate. Funny old weather, isn't it?
I know. No, it's been crazy here, but it's been a long week at work, so I'm glad it's over.
Few beers this weekend, then?
Yeah, I might have a couple tomorrow. Treat myself.
Well, me and Dave were getting our heads together, going through all the stuff that we usually go through. And I don't know whether you saw it, but on my social media site, I showed the new Spurs kit, which looks uncannily like a bus seat. So yeah. Dave made a suggestion. He's like that. He's full of it, literally. He said, what about the underground? They could have had that as a bit of an away kit. Could have been a third kit, couldn't it? Or if they really want to get basic, the deck chair version. And he came up with another one. What about that one?
Suits them.
But he realised, and so did I, when he did a bit of research. That Dave, he does like a bit of research. We obviously played them in that kit before because they're like the Bergkamp.
That's when we were good, right?
Did you realise that Tottenham in their shop sell a T-shirt and a mug that said they were in the Carabao Cup final? Not winning yet.
Doesn't surprise me.
But this will.
Doesn't surprise me. Poor mentality.
What do you make of that?
Oh my God!
It's a Harry Kane Snugsy doll. It's got no fingers. It's got no toes.
Is that like a dog toy?
Yeah, definitely a dog toy. I wonder if it squeaks or it's kind of a little bit of water comes out or something. And on our research, just for something really batty, West Bromwich Albion have gone down. They've obviously gone down a peg or two financially as well. And they're sponsored by a boiler company. And subsequently, their mascot is now Mr. Boiler Man.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And we thought Gunnosaurus was bad. It's not really that bad, is it? What's going on in 1989? Well, the First Division looked considerably different back then. Luton, Coventry, Derby County, Norwich, Nottingham Forest, Queen's Park Rangers, Millwall, Charlton, Middlesbrough, and Sheffield Wednesday were in there. Films of the year were, popularity-wise, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Roadhouse, Batman. Black Box were riding high in the charts with Ride on Time. The Bangles scored a hit with Eternal Flame. Soul to Soul had appeared, one of my favourite groups from the 80s. And unfortunately, Jason Donovan appeared with Too Many Broken Hearts, but I think it was Too Many Broken Ears, to be honest. 1989 was also the year of the World Wide Web, God bless it. The fall of the Berlin Wall, the first ever Simpsons. Nintendo Game Boy was on sale for the first time.
I remember that. Yeah,
and Salman Rushdie went into hiding. Isn't it funny? You never knew what he looked like until he went off hiding.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
The world waved goodbye to the likes of Bette Davis, Laurence Olivier, Mel Blanc from the Looney Tunes thing, Bugs Bunny and all that, Lee Van Cleef, Lucille Ball, and Sergio Leone. And on the 26th of May at Anfield, Liverpool met Arsenal to decide the destination of the First Division title. And that's what we're going to look back on. One of the greatest, if not the greatest, league finish ever.
Yeah.
Just a little back marker there. Petrol was £1.86 a gallon. And if you wanted 20 cigarettes, it cost you £1.50. A 51 centimetre pie colour TV was 300 quid. Well, 299.99.
Yeah.
And a 3-litre box of wine was £6.99. The footballers of the day were Marco van Basten, remember him well. He won the Ballon d'Or. And other big names was Ruud Gullit, Diego Maradona, and Michael Laudrup. Well, Jay, I've got to tell you, it's one of those shows where it brings back a flood of memories.
Yeah.
I think you were 6 at the time, weren't you? So You've got all the
Yeah,
stuff from Fever Pitch and the film '89, which we touch on.
yeah.
But an unbelievable night for any Arsenal supporter, and you've got the
It's
shirt.
a lovely shirt.
It's a
Yeah,
classic.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, if it's okay with you, I'll do a bit of an interview with your good self, because, like you touched on, I was a little bit too young to remember the actual night itself, and I think, you know, it'll be great to touch upon and sort of get you to enlighten us with your experiences. So, just starting off, I was just wondering if what was the just a good idea to give a bit of background on what country was like in a sense of I mean, you touched on, you gave a few you listed a few of those bits and pieces as to what was going on, but what was the actual feeling amongst the nation? What was like, you know, what was the you know, obviously Thatcher was knocking about and sort of what was
I think the country was dividing into two. Really, it's always been the lower class and the upper class, the haves and the have-nots. But I think when Thatcher came to power, obviously during the '80s, you had all the kind of greed is good thing. Everyone was out to make a quick buck. Business was booming. But in some of the other areas, like Liverpool, it was a different story altogether. But it kind of got pulled out of shape because the general perception that this country was doing well, but behind the scenes, you have places like Liverpool, which weren't doing well at all. So it was all like, you know, flashy cars. The people that had the money were splashing about in wine bars at the time of, I think it was Dire Straits and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The yuppies. The word the yuppies was formed.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty much a split nation really back then. And mobile phones. They were like that, mate. Honestly, they were, you know, they're not really mobile phones, are they, when they're that big?
No.
But,
I mean,
I remember that.
I've got friends that live sort of on the outskirts of Nottingham, and there's a lot of little mining towns on the outskirts of Nottingham. And I think around this time, obviously there was the industrial action, and there was all the issues with the mines, and you know the unrest that went along with that. So it must have been difficult, and like you said, those sort of issues applied to Liverpool as well, didn't they? So.
Yeah, it was a time where Scargill was around, locked in a fight with Thatcher that he was only going to lose. I mean, she had been planning for years. I think the Conservatives under Ted Heath had been defeated. And then when Thatcher got in, she thought, I'm not having that. So she made almost like a battle plan to kind of push the thing through. And as I say, pockets of unrest, it really did depend on what part of the country you were in.
Yeah.
How good your life was at the time.
So moving on, so let's just touch on before we actually get to the game itself, let's touch on how obviously we the players within that Liverpool squad at that time, we know them by name, you know, many know them by name, sort of Peter John Barnes, you know, thinking back, obviously you were a young man at the time. How good were they in relation to, so let's try and compare them to, say, the Liverpool team of a couple of years ago that won the Premier League and the Champions League, or the Man City team recently that have swept most clubs away. How good was that Liverpool side?
I think this side was the City of its day, or the Liverpool of its day. They were just marauding. If I've got a list of the league titles, and if you look back, it's not only that particular era, it goes from 70s. So it's they've won the league title 72 to 73, 75 to 76, 76 to 77, 78 to 79, 79 to 80, 81 to 82, 82 to 83, 83 to 84, 85 to 86, and 86 to 87.
Wow.
In the European Cups, it was 76 to 77, 77 78, 80 to 81, 83 to 84, It was a
Wow.
dominant force.
Yeah, and I can imagine there was quite a few cups thrown in, FA Cups, League Cups,
Oh yeah.
within that, and yeah. So who were the sort of the players that were making the biggest sort of impact at the time for them? Because they had so many, such a strong team.
Well, you had John Aldrich, you had
Yeah.
Ian Rush, which is superb.
Yeah.
Peter Beardsley back then. Obviously, John Barnes. I mean, he was European Footballer of the Year. It was just a magnificent blend. You had the standout players, but you had the grafters as well.
Mm-hmm.
You had the Steve Staughtons, the Steve Nicholls,
Yeah.
the McMahons.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a balance that they got absolutely right. And they were just steamrolling everyone.
Yeah.
And up until 89, I don't think Arsenal had a sniff. You know,
No.
we'd not been there or thereabouts. I think one year it was Ipswich were in contention.
Yeah.
You know, it was so weird.
Mm-hmm.
But they're very, very strong, very,
Yeah.
very strong side.
So going into sort of the back end of the season, obviously, there was the unfortunate Hillsborough disaster. Literally, what was it? April 25th, I think I've got written down here, the Hillsborough disaster. FA Cup semi-final against Nottingham Forest at obviously at Hillsborough in Sheffield. Everybody or most people know the story. Awful, tragic, heavy loss of life in the Liverpool end. How do you think the Hillsborough disaster changed football fans' view on football in general and how they viewed that season as well? So, I presume the neutrals wanted Liverpool to win the league, that season. Much. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a strange time for me personally because I wasn't particularly surprised by Hillsborough. Right. I think the Heysel Stadium disaster was 85, wasn't it? And in 1985, I went to watch Millwall versus Luton. A couple of my friends were Millwall fans. So we went all the way down there. We had it was a hell of a drive. Couldn't get parked up, and then we wound up at Kenilworth Road. I've never seen so many people in my life. It seemed like a very small ground and small streets and everything. So we went through, and I've never been so scared in my life because I've got this opinion that what they did was because it's an FA Cup final, a money spinner, they just left the gates open. And I had some friends around me, so we're all in a tight huddle, but they just kept coming in and coming in and coming in. And I don't know whether you've ever felt it at all, but when a sea of people move, it's the most spooky thing ever. I've nearly died twice in my life. Once was swimming in IAAT with the undercurrent that I misjudged, and the other time I think was this. All so my friends got swept aside.
Yeah.
And what happened then was you could feel the crush.
Yeah.
Wow. People started climbing over the fences, and what that appeared to be like was a riot. And as they dropped down, the police were straight there with the batons, and then it all kicked off. All hell.
So just because obviously in all of my adult life in all the football grounds that I've been enough to go to, there were no fences, and there haven't been any fences. So anybody listening to this pod, just explain what a football terrace was like in those days. In the difference to say the Emirates or any ground now in the Premier League. Explain what it was like.
It was just, I mean, it's a wonder we all went because it wasn't that enjoyable. Someone scored a goal, you got bounced around all over the place. The cages were put in place to stop the obvious problems of the 70s hooliganism.
Yeah.
But it just acted like a giant cage, which it was effectively. And the dangers were always there.
I mean, I think actual standing, I think I haven't really got an issue with standing. The way you describe it as a cage, and obviously we've seen the images of Hillsborough and all of the supporters pressed up against the cage of that stand. Awful. It's difficult to think how or why anybody thought that was a good idea to make a football stand like that. It was just a matter of time, wasn't it? Like you said, you kind of predicted it, or you kind of expected it rather one day. So just going back to the game itself, I presume most of the neutrals wanted Liverpool to win, right?
Yeah,
Based on
definitely.
what had happened.
There was this feeling in the country, as I touched on, that Liverpool was in bad shape and had been since the sort of 70s. It basically fell into disrepair. It was in decline. They relied on the docks. The docks had disappeared. And in 1981, there was the Toxteth riots because I think they saw there was no hope. One of the last big companies, I think it was Tate and Lyle, closed. So there was all these burning buildings. I think there was 1,000 police officers injured, 300 on the first night. Cars by the score load were torched. There was all that backdrop of unrest. The conditions, the living conditions up there were shocking. So the escapism was football. That's what they had. And then you've got this massive disaster. I mean, that picture you just spoke about, that's embedded on the back of my brain.
Yeah.
I've never been able to get rid of it. And I wished I hadn't have seen it. So escapism was the only thing via football. And then that was taken away because we all thought that the season was over. There's no point in going on.
So it's genuinely thought that was it. We were done for this season.
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't even think they'd award the trophy that year. I just thought they'd just say that's a null and void season. Yeah. It's all over. We'll pick it up next year.
Was there a clamber to get it started? Obviously you look back at just this past year and after the pandemic and how there was Project Restart. I think there was quite a large amount of people that didn't want that to start either. But was there really a genuine feeling that it wouldn't be finished? Was that amongst the football community in general?
Supporters, friends of mine, I think looking at the film 89, Lee Dixon talks about it really well and says, there was no way it was going to start back up. And Paul Merson had won the Player of the Year that year, and he said he wasn't interested. It meant nothing. And it's one of those things where, as a football fan, football, it's something that you enjoy. It's a real big part of your life. But then you get this kind of culture shock. You get this wake-up call, which Hillsborough was. And suddenly football wasn't that important anymore. It really wasn't.
It was put into perspective.
Yeah. And my thoughts go to that family, those families that fought for 30 years. And they didn't really get justice for anything, really. And it's quite interesting. That day, I was looking it up. And apparently there's 7 turnstiles at Hillsborough.
Yeah.
And there were 5,000 fans trying to enter.
Wow.
So the chief of police in charge that day decided to open the gates. So if you went to the left or if you went to the right, you were probably going to be safe that day and get home for tea. But if you went to the middle section,
they'd just be.
That's where it was. That's where all the issues were.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like a lucky dip, but the
unlucky dip.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, let's move on to the game itself. Let's talk about the manager. Let's talk about George Graham. And it's again, just want to touch on how we've spoke about George Graham before on the pod, and I just want to briefly how I viewed George Graham back in the day. I started to sort of watch Arsenal in the mid-90s. My mum and dad aren't football supporters, and they never got me into Arsenal, as you well know. Certainly Ian Wright, he got me into the Arsenal and with the kit, and I sort of grew to love him and the club around the same time. So, sort of in the mid-90s, around, you remember the season, I think it was 92, 93 maybe, where we beat Sheffield United in the FA Cup and League Cup final at the old Wembley. It was around that time that I really started to get into Arsenal properly, and then obviously that led into the Cup Winners' Cup final, and then it sort of went downhill for George not long after that. So obviously 89. What was your view of George at the time? How did you view him? Forgetting what I've just said about what happened later on at that time, how did you view the manager? Did you feel that he was capable of getting over the line?
At the time when he was appointed, I don't think anyone wanted him because he was coming from Millwall, and they weren't ripping up any trees, to be honest. And it was all a bit weird. He was a former Arsenal boy. Yeah. But the strange thing was that the mood kind of changed. He came in and he was quite ruthless. Mm-hmm. He got rid of some of the big guys, the big names: Charlie Nicholas, Graham Ricks, Kenny Sanson. They all started biting the dust quite quickly as he had a clear out, and he had this vision to promote the academy players. Yeah, and gradually you got the feeling that there was something happening under George Graham. It wasn't to everyone's liking. I mean, I was really upset when certain players went. Yeah. But then you get over that. When you get a few stronger results and you look a bit better and the football's better, you can get over all that. And then it kind of surfaced that he was a real disciplinarian. He wouldn't take any nonsense whatsoever. If you give him a crooked look, you might not play at the weekend. It was that bad, you know. They demanded respect.
And you could see at the same time that respect and that demand was getting results from the players, right? Obviously, they were moving in the right direction.
Absolutely.
And obviously, he made some good signings along the way, didn't he? Some from the lower leagues. What was the thought with that? Were there sort of unrest? You know, if you think in this modern day era of football, if Arsenal went down the leagues and signed players from the League One or League Two or Championship, even the Championship, you know, he would get ridiculed. You know, what was it like back then?
It was quite weird because you were getting unknown players replacing big names.
Yeah.
And then you kind of saw the potential that was there. But for a while, when you were going to games and chatting with the lads, it's like, oh, who's he bought this week? Never even heard of him. And there he was in his office getting his secretary to bring him all the local rags, the chip wrappers. And he's looking through to see who keeps popping up in the local reports. Yeah. It's a completely different way of doing it.
Yeah, very much so.
I mean, who would do that now? No one.
No.
It's quite weird. But something happened about 89, which was really interesting because Arsenal started dropping points like it was going out of fashion. And there's footage on YouTube of George taking a training session. Yeah. And I don't think it was long before the Liverpool game. And there he is, just almost instilling this siege mentality. You know, it's us against them. A bit of a Fergie job, really. And it's quite interesting to hear George say that when all the young players started coming through at United, he didn't get the same respect in that sort of instance. You know, he had all the Paul Davises coming through and the Rocky Rocastles, and the media never really picked up on that, where they did with Fergie, with the Scholes and the Butt and Beckham and all that sort of thing. And then on the day of the game, to actually sort of say, I think he read the book, the Naked Eight by Desmond Morris, and he said, lads, we're not going up to Liverpool until the day. Who does that? No one. They get up there, they get in the hotel. And I think the idea behind that was so that it didn't intensify. You didn't have time to think about it. Yeah. And it's just, I think he had a way of convincing players that what he was saying was actually true.
Yeah.
And he did that on so many occasions. When you listen to the players talking about him fondly, but respectfully,
yeah,
quite a balance, that one. But they would say that he would say something, and you go away, well, it must be right. George said it.
Fantastic.
What a motivator.
Yeah, and you say when you talk, I mean, you're just talking like that. You give me a bit of a goosebump when you talk about George in that way, because for so many years people spoke about Austin like that, didn't they? About how maybe on the training ground he wasn't the best, as in like a hands-on coach, but he would look at the squad that he had at let's say at the Invincibles squad, and I've seen quite a few interviews of those guys where they talk about Austin, and they say that he would never try and overcoach us. He would just he would say to us, give us the belief that we're already superb, and we need the belief to show it and express it, and not to overcoach. And it sounds very similar to what you were saying then, and obviously it's a different era of football. You're dealing with, and George was dealing with potentially a lot more difficult group of player, right? Because of the drinking culture that's obviously become well known in the Arsenal squad.
The Tuesday Club.
Infamous Tuesday Club.
I've been to that.
I love hearing stories like that about those days, because that group must have been quite difficult to keep focused. You've got your Mersons, you've got your Adams, you've got your Perry Groves, you've got your even the likes of Rokas, Davis, and I love hearing stuff like that. Anyway, let's move on to
the lovely story. Let me just finish with this story.
Please do.
Paul Merson said that they were playing somewhere or another. I think it's available on YouTube, and they had a lull in whatever they were doing, and they went out for a drink. So they walked round, and they decided to have half, as you do. So they went in this pub, and he was with certain players, and they all had a half. So they drank that, and he said round the corner came another set of the lads. So it was, I think it was Alan Smith and a couple of others. And he said, well, we're just having a half. So they all had another half.
Yeah.
So the table now is full of glasses. And who comes round the corner after they've buggered off and they've not been seen? George Graham. And Merson says that he just looked at the table and gave them a look and a nod. And then they were supposed to be flying out for a friendly. So they were all getting packed and all the rest of it. And the ones that were left outside that pub, George Graham said, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to worry. You're not coming with us. Yeah. It was as harsh as that, as ruthless as that.
Yeah, but it got results, didn't it? Yeah. It got results, and that's what the business. That's the elite level football, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So we are going to take a little break talking about the game. We're going to focus on Alan Smith, and we're going to have a little bit of a player profile. And I want you to give me just a sort of a brief description of what type of player he was, and what he brought to the Arsenal team, because I can imagine there'll be quite a few people listening to this like myself, that maybe can't really remember too much about him when he was actually playing. Yeah, so what would he like as a player?
Alan Smith was, I think, if you looked at him the wrong way, I mean, by today's standards, you wouldn't be ripping up fences to go and buy him. But what he had a great awareness, a great touch. Some of the kind of balls that he took, he was great header of the ball as well.
Yeah.
But he knew instinctively where to be. If you watch 89, we'll talk about the goal later on, the final killer goal.
Yeah.
But he said as soon as Dixon got the ball, he knew where Lee was, and he would also be known where, they did this in training 1,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very well drilled thing, very specific to the player. And there was no better striker for me. He very intellectually savvy, on the same lines as Berbatov and Sheringham. He just, he might not be in a glut of goals all the time, but he could hold up, he could lay it off, he could header it on, and very massively underrated.
Yeah, great football mind.
As we will see, because we'll play some footage as well about the 2 goals in this game, you'll see the touch of the second goal, which was, it was Lukic to Dixon, Dixon over to Smith, Smith down the field because he saw Mickey Thomas, but it was, he took the ball and turned and delivered a superb ball over the top. He had split seconds to think about that. That was a move under the circumstances with the pressure that you could quite easily have fluffed it and passed it to a Liverpool player. But he was that type of intelligent player, looking, waiting to see who's around, and then getting that crucial, I think Lee Dixon calls it velvet touch. And that's what he was known for. I mean, a superb all-round player. I haven't got the stats in front of me now, but I think he's 27th out of Arsenal's top 50, which is a bit of a shame, really, because I think he deserves to be higher than that.
I mean, I've got a few stats for you. He won the Golden Boot twice. He won the League Championship twice. FA Cup winner, League Cup winner, Cup Winners' Cup winner, and he scored the winner in the final. And he won the Community or Charity Shield twice. And he scored 115 goals. Career, right?
Yeah. And it was only brought to a close by a knee injury, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But great service.
Isn't there also, I think he only picked up, was it 1 yellow card in his entire, I might be wrong about that. But
he wasn't the type to get involved, was he, really?
I'm pretty sure he had an almost perfect disciplinary record.
I'll tell you what, should we cut to some footage so we can see Alan Smith?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's look at this.
Fantastic.
Top man.
Right, so let's get to the game itself. When you saw the team, what was your views? What was any surprises, any shocks?
Well, I remember looking at the team and thinking, back three.
Yeah.
What's that about? And I wasn't the only one, apparently, because I've got some quotes and stuff. It was like, what's he doing? Why has he done that? Here's a game where it looked like we were going to leave ourselves open. Yeah. But in fact, he had a big game plan. Winterburn and Dixon were pushed up further to try and negate the threat from Liverpool.
Yeah.
Especially John Barnes. I mean, they wanted to take him out of the equation. But I was nervous. Going to Anfield to try and get 2 clear goals.
I mean, just before you carry on, just explain what we needed to do on the night to win the game, just in case there's anybody, I mean, I'm sure there won't be, but in case there's anybody listening to this or watching this that isn't sure is what we needed to do. So just go for it. Tell us what we need.
Well, Liverpool have been on a 24-match unbeaten run. They closed a 19-point gap, and they thrashed West Ham 5-1. They were knocking in goals for fun. They were the most devastating team in the division, and Arsenal suddenly started dropping points. I think the last two games was against Wimbledon and Derby County, and they dropped points, and that left the door open. So we had to go to Anfield and get 2 clear goals. If they scored, that was pretty much it. You didn't do it at Anfield. Arsenal hadn't won at Anfield for 15 years. I mean, that's the scale of the task. Yeah. It was massive.
That right. So the teams. So obviously the back three. Mind games again from Graham. Do you think that would Dalglish have expected that? Yeah, Dalglish would not have expected that. Yeah,
and I reckon the team didn't expect it as well, because apparently when he announced the team, they kind of looked at him blankly. What's he done?
Yeah.
You know, we've got to go up there and really take it to them. And he's done this. I mean, it wasn't a bad back three or anything, far from it. But it was crazy stuff. Perry Grove said we thought it was strange. Our manager George Graham wanted to play this way, as we needed to score twice. The gaffer sat down and said, "I really fancy us, but we're going to play with 3 centre backs." We thought he'd gone mad. We thought he completely lost it.
Fantastic. Brilliant. But that's, I mean, you imagine, you put yourself in Perry Grove's position, or any one of those players, you would be thinking that, wouldn't you? You know, something so crazy as that at the time.
Well, our form wasn't that good against Liverpool that season. If I look at the sheet here, for 89, we've got the 2nd of November 1988. It was a 1-1 in the League Cup. Then you've got Arsenal v Liverpool. It was a 2-1 loss in the League Cup. You've got Arsenal v Liverpool 1-1. We were quite intimidated by them. You know, we weren't getting the rub of the green with them. And they were so phenomenally talented and spirited. They could lock you out or just roll you over. It was like that, really.
So the game kicks off, and there's a few chances in the first half, but we end up going in at 0-0 at half time. Just before we carry on, where were you watching it personally? And at half time, how optimistic were you that we would get 2 goals in a game that we probably wouldn't have been expecting to get
1? Well, I was in a pub.
Yeah.
Couldn't get tickets, unfortunately. It was just banged out, and it's probably lucky I didn't, because I think the game was delayed by 15 minutes.
And it's Friday night as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was massive delays on the motorways and all that sort of stuff. Can't remember the name of the pub. There was myself and about 6 friends, all dressed up in the Arsenal stuff. And the table in front of us probably resembled Paul Merson's story. It was like that. I think there was that nervous anticipation where you started drinking early just to soothe the nerves.
Of course. Yeah.
And I spoke to my friends. One seemed, but he was quite plastered, actually. One seemed really confident, but I didn't. I thought we would go up there. We might be lucky enough to get a goal. And then the typical Arsenal thing, it's an Arsenal thing. We'd go 1-0 winners and they'd still win.
Yeah.
I had no idea about the drama that was going to unfold. And I've got to be honest with you, it was not the game I expected when it kicked off.
Yeah.
I thought Liverpool, they had nothing to lose, really, did they? They just come out, get that goal. Arsenal were on the back foot. But it didn't work out like that. George Graham says in 89, that's what he expected, which is a brilliant film. If you've got an evening and the missus is out or whatever, or you know, she's gone out with the girls, you've got to put Fever Pitch on, followed by 89, because you get the full rounded version.
Just for a second. I mean, 89 itself, to any football fan other than Spurs, is a great football documentary it's brilliant, isn't
One
it?
of the best.
The way it's put together, the interviews as it's going through, the actual analysis of the game. It's really well polished, well put together.
Amy
Docu-film.
Lawrence, isn't it?
Yeah,
Amy Lawrence, and the players were involved as well. I think Lee Dixon was one of the producers.
yeah, and it's got some great stories of the evening itself. And then obviously you touched on Fever Pitch, like fantastic film. Very, I think you can relate to Colin Firth's character so much in that film.
That's me.
Yeah, great film, great film. So anyway, back to the game.
I've got to just mention this though.
Oh yeah, go. Please do.
Before we go any further, was after the Hillsborough disaster, Arsenal showed the class. We've spoken about it, where you said, you know, it really impressed you that the players came onto the pitch with bunches of flowers. But I didn't realise they also gave the charity a £30,000 cheque. You know, that was the Arsenal that you grew up loving. That could actually seize the moment and do something so classy. It was unbelievable. Great gesture. I think everyone was
really
impressed.
Really good. I love seeing that, and that's featured in the film 89. You see the players going off to different parts of Anfield, giving flowers to the supporters, and like you said, the classic side of Arsenal that unfortunately in this day and age you don't tend to see too much. Anyway, let's not talk about that. Let's get back to the game. Half time, 0-0. You're in the pub. You've had a few beers.
I was more optimistic by half time because I'd been quite bladdered by then. The jukebox was turned up at the halfway point, and you kind of you felt good. You weren't behind. It was 0-0. There was everything to play for. You know, 45 minutes is a long time.
Yeah,
and it proved to be so.
Yeah. So then the first goal goes in, and it's a controversial goal. Talk me through it. Talk me through what you remember, the celebrations in the pub, and the sort of the period afterwards where there was the debate as to whether the goal was going to count.
Well, it was classified, I think, as an indirect free kick. David Hutchinson, David Hutchinson. Yeah, that's the connection that we were going to make. Obviously, David's called David Hutchinson. Funnily enough, George Graham, when I said about the Millwall Luton match, he was the manager for Millwall, and David Hutchinson was the referee back then. So it kind of all twisted around.
Wow. When did you realise that? Is that a recent thing, or did you realise it pretty much? Yeah. Wow.
I did when we were researching this. I was like, I can't believe it. And Dave went, wherever the action is, there's a Hutchinson. He's such a drip.
Fantastic.
But yeah, it was everyone was optimistic, I think, blindly drunk optimistic, and waiting for whatever unfolded. And then that first goal went in.
Yeah.
So it was an indirect free kick. And as it came over, I wasn't sure when I saw it, because there was a pub full of people, arms waving about and all the rest of it, whether Alan Smith got a touch.
Yeah.
But the subsequent replay showed that he got the merest of glances on that ball. And, you know, we're talking about Alan Smith. And one of the things he did was his timing was excellent as well. Yeah. And he said that this free kick was practiced 1,000 times and it never came off. And then it comes over, he gets a small glance on it, it went in, and the ref gave the goal. So there was pandemonium. The pub was bouncing. I was kissing strangers, slopping the ball over myself. And hold on a minute, what's going on? So David Hutchinson is surrounded by red shirts. I mean, there must have been 6 or 7 shirts there, and they're all pointing the finger really in his face. And I was thinking, oh no, he's gonna disallow it. He's gonna disallow it. Apparently, if you watch 89 as well, this all cements together, is that they said to him, have a word with your linesman. So he went over there and he said, did I put my hand up? There was an indirect free kick. He said, yes. He said, was there an offside? Which it really, that was the only thing it could have been, was an offside. And it wasn't. And Alan Smith said he knew when he put the run in. And that's another skill of Alan Smith, when to bolt.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, you know that as a striker, wouldn't you?
Yeah, wow.
So
Brilliant.
yeah, and there was all that sort of hubbub going on, and it seemed to take forever, and no one knew what was going on. It's pre-VAR, but it was like that sort of moment that was lost.
So the goal's given. So it's given.
Yeah,
You've all gone crazy.
Turned round and said, you know, that's it, goal.
So then the place goes crazy.
Oh, absolutely, it was mental, absolutely.
So
mental.
then things start to calm down, and then it becomes the impossible starting to become possible, right? You can actually see that this team that you described so well, this Liverpool side that was so good and so dominant, they were there. They were there for the taking, right? Arsenal are winning 1-0, but we need another one. And then,
well, that was the problem. Was getting the first goal was obviously a massive hurdle. The second goal, you were thinking, oh, you probably won't get it, because all they had to do, really, technically, was lock the shop.
Yeah,
but that's not Liverpool. That's not the Liverpool back then.
So fast forward to the 70. I think it's the 74th minute. Michael Thomas goes through on goal, and he fluffs his lines and he puts it wide.
Oh,
what would you know? Obviously, yeah, I kind of know what your answer's going to be, but did you think that was the chance? Was it? Yeah,
that was it. He kind of sort of scuffed the shot. He wasn't that sure. He had, people on him, but he wasn't that sure. And Grobbelaar just mopped it up quite easily. And my friend, who was on my shoulder, virtually said, "That's it. I won't tell you the language, but he said, that's it. We've done that."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I was, looking at the clock, and it seemed to have passed. That moment seemed to have passed, and it was. We were just getting ready for the explanations, and obviously, as a neutral, they would have wanted Liverpool to win, and if you had to suffer it, you would have sort of just, give them a round of applause for what they'd gone through that particular season.
But that was not to be, because as we got towards the last few minutes,
can I just show you this?
Yeah, go for it. Please do.
I just want to show you this.
Yeah, there you go. Famous, such a great. I mean, I love watching the clip. It's you never get tired of watching the goal, watching the build-up with Steve McMahon there pointing at everybody, telling everybody there's a minute left, and like you touched on before, defending or shutting up shop at 1-0 or just wasn't the Liverpool way, and it proved to be when John Barnes had the ball in the corner, and he tried to carve out another chance, didn't he? And it subsequently lost the ball, and it ended up with Lukic. So Lukic, he rolls it out to Dixon. Right now, so you take over from, obviously you're watching it in the pub. There's one final chance.
There was seconds to go. I think it was Perry Groves said he ran past the referee and said, "How long have we got?" And he said, "You haven't."
Right.
Lukic threw the ball out. Dixon's on the right. Dixon takes a touch, puts it through to Alan Smith. Alan Smith does this exquisite, kills the ball dead, turns, and then does this touch. I'm not even sure what sort of touch it is. Is it a flick? Is it a lob? Straight into the path of Mickey Thomas. He said he caught him outside of his eye. It was that quick. It was that instant. And his reactions were brilliant. But Michael Thomas has got a lot of stuff to do. I mean, the Liverpool defenders are in front of him. He gets very lucky. There's a rebound who
a double touch, isn't it?
Yeah, I said to you when we were talking about it just loosely that I thought it was Ray Houghton, but it wasn't Ray Houghton. It was Steve Nicol, I think. It bounced off the number 4, and it came back into his path. And
he
still
takes
had
the wrong goal.
to do.
Yeah.
And that this is the scene in the pub, right? Set the scene.
Yeah,
We're all watching. He's just fluffed a goal. They've got the smallest ever telly.
Yeah, they all crowded around. Yeah,
with that much on the back,
yeah,
perched on a shelf. The place is jumping. Everyone's screaming, and he's taking forever. And everyone's saying, "Shoot, shoot, shoot!" I know the Arsenal players were as well. And there came that, because you can see the two defenders coming in,
closing in. Yeah,
it just had to be a tackle. It just had to be one tackle, and it could have even gone to a penalty, and it wouldn't have mattered for Liverpool. But it was just that moment of nerves. My heart was thumping. I felt sick. I couldn't even have a drink at that point. And then he waited for Grobbelaar to go. Grobbelaar went, and he just put the ball in the back of the net. And I've never seen such a dodgy celebration in my life. He looked like a worm. He was just
I love it.
Rolling around.
I love it. I mean, from my point of view, watching it back, like I said, I can't watch it enough. And you've described it so well, that the part that Alan Smith plays in it, and it really is superb. He comes off the defender, takes the ball on the half turn, all in one motion, takes the ball on the half turn, catches Thomas running, and plays a beautiful ball. Thomas gets a bit lucky, but the finish, I mean, Grobbelaar, he sends Grobbelaar the wrong way. The defenders all go the other way, and he like chips it over the keeper. And the celebration is probably the best I've ever seen. He's just, and it's a great interview.
It's so bad, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great interview on 89, I think, with Thomas, and he's like, you don't know what to do. You don't plan for something like that happening. Even a professional footballer who, you know, it's hard, isn't it, to get onto their level, because we're obviously never going to get to that level. But he said, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't control myself. It was, and all of it. And what makes it even better for me as well is in front of the Liverpool supporters, which I don't mean that in a sort of in an arrogant way. It was just like, he wasn't doing that celebration because it was in front of our supporters. It was even more so amplifies the whole. He's not really in control of himself, because
do you know what it reminded me of? Someone had said that the house was on fire and he was in a sleeping bag.
There you go.
He was trying to get out of the sleeping bag.
And then I mean, the camera pans to the supporters in the stadium, and I mean, it must have been amazing in the pub you were in at the time. And
the drinks went flying. There was a table full of drinks went flying. Everyone was dancing around. People cuddling the bar staff. Suddenly did a conga outside the door.
I mean, what great memories.
Nothing was safe, and I think we were locked in till about 3:30 in the morning. And I missed 3 days off work. I remember that.
Yeah, worth it.
I had to phone up with some sort of lame excuse that I couldn't go in. Should we quickly have a look at those goals again, just to relive it all?
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Winterburn and Richardson behind it. Adams has made a darting little run in there. And Smith! And Arsenal have scored. The Liverpool players are surrounding the referee, asking him to speak to a linesman.
The linesman never hesitated at all, Brian. I looked immediately towards the linesman.
Well, let's see here. Winterburn's kick, and glanced in by Smith. Arsenal comes streaming forward now, and surely what will be their last attack. A good ball by Dixon, finding Smith. For Thomas, charging through the midfield. Thomas, it's up for grabs now! Thomas! Right at the end! An unbelievable climax to the league season. Well into injury time, the Liverpool players are down, absolutely abject. Aldridge is down, Barnes is down, Dalglish just stands there. Nichols on his knees, McMahon's on his knees. Suddenly it was Michael Thomas bursting through. The bounce fell his way, He flips it wide of Grobbelaar. They've denied Liverpool the League and Cup double. Arsenal then champions for the first time since 1971. The 9th time in their history. The first side to win by 2 goals here at Anfield since 1986. A superhuman effort against the odds. And achieved with that goal in the last minute by Michael Thomas.
So Arsenal dramatically lift the championship trophy. A marvellous title race that went all the way to the last seconds of the season. The greatest finish of all time. Here's the final.
And I mean, you know, in this day and age, with Sky and everything, you know, the Aguero goal against QPR often gets described as the best ever league finish. But you've described how good Liverpool were. You've also described how dominant they were and what they won and how consistently they won. We were in their backyard, where they didn't really concede goals. I mean, I think you'll agree with me. There's
I'll make a comparison here. It's like West Ham playing Brazil.
Yeah.
That's the analogy really between the two sides. No disrespect to West Ham. I love the old ground. I can't stand this hubcap they've got now, but it's that sort of golf in class. We were emerging. We weren't rubbish or anything up until that particular year. We were known as a bit of a cup side.
Yeah.
But he had instilled something, George Graham, that really started pulling together in that year of '89. The young players, the mentality, the drive, the determination to win, and he got in their heads. Strange old year for so many reasons, and we've touched on a lot of the stuff because you can't do this match without setting the tone and the background and all that. But another thing I must touch on is it's up for grabs. Has got to be out of the commentary, one of the two, and the other one's Kenneth Wolstenholme. You know, think it's all over. It is now. What a line! Unbelievable. Shall I read you a few of the quotes at the time that?
Please do.
They were very anti-Arsenal. They were huge underdogs. The Times said, for the sake of the English game, Liverpool must win. Obviously, hearts on the sleeve there. Surprisingly, Charlie Nicholas said, he must have been still smiling, I think. He said that you don't have a prayer, Arsenal. The Sun said the Gunners were there to make up the numbers. And Steve McMahon said, we're not worried about Arsenal now. And the Times said that it was just impossible. So these are the things that George Graham suddenly blocked out with his siege mentality. You know, we're all right. We stick to the game plan, and it worked. I've never known a night like it. I mean, at Arsenal we've had a lot of fantastic football, a lot of great nights. But that's up there for me. '89 was massive.
I mean, the way that you've described it, you know, I mean, I wish I was around, you know, in those days to experience that. I mean, like you said, I've been lucky as an Arsenal supporter to have enjoyed many, but I'm not sure that would have been topped by anything that I've seen since. Even the Invincibles, you know, I don't think there was a period, even in that run, that topped what you have described tonight.
Well, Graham could have had the Invincibles as well, couldn't he? Funnily enough, years beforehand, but just missed out. So it kind of shows you it's always hard when you're comparing Wenger with Graham, because Graham achieved something from a different era, and Wenger gave us so much pleasure with entertainment levels and the players. I mean, Christ, if you have you ever experienced an Arsenal time as good as the one Wenger gave us in terms of personnel?
Quality of player. Yeah. No.
Oh my God, it's just endless list.
Just before we finish, I just wanted to touch on how well you thought that team would have done in Europe the following year. If people aren't familiar with this, the situation at that time was banned from Europe due to the ISIL disaster. And it was the season after where English clubs were allowed back into European football. And I just wondered what you thought, how you thought that George Graham side of that exact sort of couple of years, with how motivated he was. And I just wondered how you thought they'd have got on.
I think we could have done really well in it. I think we could have actually got to the final, if not won it.
Mm-hmm.
You only needed 4 wins. There. We had a great goalkeeper, who's very underrated as well, Lukic. The back 4 or the back 3, depends.
Very settled.
Yeah, so it was all there. We had some of the, like Perry Groves, he was a workhorse. He wasn't one of the glamour boys, and I think that's what George was trying to achieve, to try and mould this team where it was team first, and it wasn't about the superstars. That's why he outed all these other people, and he firmly established that. It was a wonderful thing to see, but they were strong. They could dig in. It wasn't uncommon to the old 1-0 to the Arsenal when it got dirty and we had to shut the door. I tell you, 89, had it been the other way around, we would have locked the shop. Liverpool would have scored against us and they wouldn't have scored anymore, and we would have seen it out. That's the difference between those two sides and what George Graham built from the back to the front. But I think we would have done really well in Europe.
Because, I mean, there were only 4 rounds. There was the first quarter-final, semi-final, and final. It's crazy. And then you look at the team. So the team that won it the following year was AC Milan. They had a great side. Ruud Gullit, Marco van Basten, Baresi, Maldini. Very good side. And I'm not taking anything away from that team at all. But they played Benfica in the final, who, on the face of it, didn't as good a side as Milan. And again, I know I've said it a few times, but you described the Liverpool team so well of 89. An elite football team that we managed to beat to the league title. And I can imagine, maybe not so much these days, but definitely in the following years after 89, I can imagine George Graham was quite frustrated not being able to take that team into Europe. And obviously he did go into Europe and win a European trophy, but it wasn't the one that maybe I think that he really wanted to have a crack at the European Cup as it was in those days with that team.
I think he was very disappointed by it all. But I suppose the offset is that 89 was such a special achievement, with so long without a trophy, and then to win it against all the odds in the way it happened, with the final last gasp kick of the match. And when you mentioned about Man City and they're going on about Martin Tyler screaming Aguero, it was the best thing ever. It was against QPR. You balance those two out. This was an achievement. 89. That was an achievement, and they played well all season. But it was QPR they were up against. It wasn't Real Madrid or anything.
And they were at home.
Yeah, exactly. So, a great game it was. But let me just show you a couple of these back pages I've run off. It's lovely to see them because it just brings it back. And up in the top corner, it's got "I'll steal the title." So he lived up to it, didn't he? And the greatest story ever told.
Fantastic. That's still true to this day.
Yeah.
Whereas from a footballing sense, from a footballing point of view, in English football, still for me the Great.
I think anyone who obviously, because we've got younger fans out there who've missed out on that, and we're talking historically, and it's very important to link up with your club for all its success. Get hold of Fever Pitch, which is a brilliant, entertaining story, and watch 89, because there's lots. We tried to touch on what it was like back then, but you get the visual feel of it as well. So yeah, check those out.
Definitely.
And well, I suppose we'll wrap it up now, won't we?
Yeah,
I'm all excited out, really. It was like I was down the pub again.
Yeah, well, that's what I was about to say. You described it so well, and it was almost like I was in the pub with you. I loved
that
it.
would have been good.
Yeah. I mean, I loved it. Thanks ever so much for letting me on and letting me ask you a few questions. And yeah, brilliant stuff.
I tell you what, we have got coming up. We've got the second series of the audio version. So I just said to someone today that we will be doing a few of these YouTube versions, but we'll be back for the audio version as well, because I love doing it. It's just amazing. Thanks to everyone for watching. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. And we will be back on your screens or in your ears fairly shortly. Jay, thanks ever so much. It's been a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care.
All right, mate. Take care.
Cheers.
Up the Gooners.